What if I told you that just in 1 month, the political world of the United States was shaken to its core? In this video, we will explore the first month of Donald Trump in the Oval Office. From rewriting citizenship laws to dismantling entire government agencies, Trump's executive orders have sparked nationwide protests and courtroom battles. But that's not all. Some of these decisions might just redefine what it means to be American. If you think you know politics, think again. This is just the beginning. 10. Birthright Citizenship Overhaul. Trump issued an executive order to end birthright citizenship, challenging the 14th Amendment, which grants citizenship to anyone born on U.S. soil. This decision faced legal challenges in district courts across New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maryland, and Washington. Opponents argue that the policy violates the citizenship clause, sparking a legal battle over constitutional rights. The issue quickly became a hot-button topic in political discourse, with both sides presenting compelling arguments regarding national identity and constitutional interpretation. If implemented, this policy could strip millions of people of their citizenship status, affecting voting rights, social security, and other benefits. It could redefine national identity and reshape immigration policies. Supporters see it as a step to control immigration, which critics view it as an attack on constitutional protections. The broader implications extend beyond individual rights, as this could alter the demographic and economic landscape of the United States. The legal implications are significant. Courts must determine whether the president has the authority to alter constitutional rights through an executive order. This debate could lead to a Supreme Court decision, influencing future interpretations of the 14th Amendment. Legal scholars and civil rights groups are closely monitoring developments, as a ruling in favor of the order could set a precedent for executive authority over constitutional matters. Public reactions has been polarized. Advocates argue that ending birthright citizenship would deter illegal immigration, while critics contend that it undermines the fundamental principles of the U.S. Constitution. Protests and demonstrations erupted in major cities, highlighting the deeply rooted divisions in American society over immigration policy. 9. Suspension of asylum access. Trump suspended asylum access at the southwest border, citing national security concerns. This decision faced immediate legal opposition from the ACLU and other advocacy groups, who claim it violates international human rights agreements. Critics argue that the policy blocks a legal pathway for those fleeing persecution and violence. The sudden implementation left many asylum seekers stranded, creating immediate humanitarian challenges. The policy left thousands of asylum seekers stranded at the border, leading to humanitarian crises. Some are without basic necessities, while others face legal uncertainty. Supporters argue it strengthens border security, but opponents believe it violates international obligations. Reports from non-profit organizations detail overcrowded shelters and deteriorating conditions, raising ethical concerns about the treatment of vulnerable populations. Legal battles continue as courts evaluate the policy's alignment with U.S. and international law. The outcome could set a precedent for future asylum regulations and executive branch's power over immigration policies. If upheld, this policy could significantly alter how the U.S. processes asylum claims, affecting thousands of future applicants. Public and political response has been divided. While some Americans support stricter immigration control, others believe this policy tarnishes the country's reputation as a refuge for the oppressed. Media coverage has intensified scrutiny, with stories of affected families fueling both sides of the debate. 8. Firing federal employees with Schedule F. Trump reinstated the Schedule F classification, making it easier to fire federal employees. This move faced legal challenges for undermining civil service protections and potentially allowing political bias in hiring and firing decisions. Critics argue it disrupts the nonpartisan nature of public service. The change marked a significant shift in the balance of power within the federal workforce. The policy gives the president increased control over federal employees, influencing how policies are implemented across government agencies. This raises concerns about job security and the politicization of civil service roles. Supporters see it as a way to increase government efficiency, However, opponents warned that it could lead to a loyalty-based hiring system, prioritizing political alignment over expertise. Legal disputes focus on due process and civil service protections. If upheld, this policy could permanently change federal employment practices, impacting the structure and function of American bureaucracy. The potential long-term effects include the shifts in institutional knowledge and reduced accountability within agencies. The reaction among federal employees has been one of concern and uncertainty. Many fear that the classification could lead to job instability, discouraging talented professionals from pursuing governmental careers. Unions and worker advocacy groups have launched campaigns to oppose the measure, emphasizing the need for an impartial civil service system. 7. Ending DEI programs. Trump ended diversity, equity, and inclusion programs within federal agencies, including the Federal Aviation Administration. This move faced legal challenges from organizations claiming it violates free speech rights and exceeds presidential authority. The policy reflected a broader ideological divide over the role of diversity initiatives in public institutions. The policy impacts workplace culture by eliminating training on diversity and inclusion. Supporters argue it prevents political indoctrination, while critics believe it hinders progress towards an inclusive workplace. The debate centers on cultural representation and workplace equality. Employees within affected agencies reported increased tensions as discussions about diversity became more contentious. Legal proceedings examine whether the executive order infringes on constitutional rights. The outcome could influence the future of workplace diversity initiatives and the scope of executive power in shaping organizational policies. A ruling in favor of the order might prompt similar actions at the state level, further altering the landscape of DEI programs nationwide. Public reaction has been sharply divided. While conservative groups praise the decision as a move forward merit-based employment, civil rights activists warned of the broader implications for historically marginalized communities. Protests and lawsuits have emerged reflecting the deep societal divisions surrounding diversity initiatives. 6. Banning transgender military service. Trump signed an executive order banning transgender individuals from openly serving in the military, citing military readiness and cost concerns. This decision was met with immediate backlash, as advocacy groups and legal experts argued that it was a regressive policy targeting a vulnerable group. The policy reversed an Obama-era directive that allowed transgender individuals to serve openly, raising concerns about fairness and inclusion in the armed forces. The ban directly affected thousands of transgender service members who are either currently serving or planning to enlist. Critics contended that the policy reinforced discrimination and harmed military morale, while supporters claimed it was necessary for maintaining unit cohesion and operational effectiveness. The decision also sparked debates on whether gender identity should factor into military eligibility and whether exclusionary policies were justifiable. Legal battles quickly ensued, focusing on whether the ban violated the Fifth Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Several lawsuits challenged the order, leading to temporary injunctions and subsequent policy revisions. Courts examined whether the military had provided sufficient justification for the exclusion and whether the policy was rooted in genuine concerns or mere prejudice. Beyond the legal ramifications, the ban ignited a broader discussion on civil rights and identity in military service. The outcome of these legal challenges had implications for future policies affecting LGBTQ+ individuals in public institutions, setting precedents for how gender identity and equal protection are interpreted under U.S. law. 5. Federal funding freeze. Trump temporarily halted federal foreign and domestic aid, impacting programs like SNAP food aid, housing assistance, education, and climate initiatives. The decision was framed as a budgetary control measure aimed at reducing government spending. However, the freeze disproportionately affected low-income communities, sparking widespread concern among social welfare organizations and state governments reliant on federal support. The halt on funding disrupted essential services for millions of Americans. Programs that provided food security, affordable housing, and educational resources face financial uncertainty, with some organizations forced to cut services or lay off staff. Supporters of the freeze argued that the move was necessary to rein in government overreach and spending inefficiencies. Critics, however, contended that such measures placed a burden on fiscal responsibility on the most vulnerable populations. Legal debate centered around the executive branch's authority to unilaterally control federal spending without congressional approval. Lawsuits were filed, challenging the constitutionality of withholding funds that had already been allocated by Congress. The courts had to determine whether the president had the power to override congressional appropriations and what limitations, if any, should be placed on executive control over over the budget. The legal precedent set by this case could redefine the balance of power between Congress and the President in budgetary decisions. If upheld, similar executive actions could become more frequent, fundamentally altering how federal funds are distributed and controlled in the future. 4. Establishing the Department of Government Efficiency. Trump created the Department of Government Efficiency to reduce federal spending and streamline bureaucratic processes. The initiative aimed to centralize budget oversight and increase operational efficiency across government agencies. However, the department quickly faced legal and administrative hurdles, as critics argued that it lacked congressional authorization and violated existing governance protocols. One of the primary concerns was DOJ's failure to comply with the Federal Advisory Committee Act, which mandates transparency and public accountability for newly established government entities. Additionally, the department faced legal challenges when attempting to access Treasury payment systems, as privacy law violations and procedural issues prevented seamless implementation. These setbacks hindered DOJ's effectiveness and called into question the legitimacy of its operations. Critics of DOJ contended that consolidating financial oversight within a single executive branch entity gave the president excessive control over public funds. Concerns were raised about potential mismanagement, reduced transparency, and the marginalization of congressional oversight. Supporters, on the other hand, argued that reducing bureaucratic redundancy could lead to long-term savings and greater fiscal responsibility. Legal battles over DOJ's authority highlighted broader questions about administrative law and executive overreach. If upheld, the decision to create such a department could set the precedent for future presidents seeking to bypass congressional checks and restructure government agencies unilaterally. 3. Housing migrants at Guantanamo Bay. Trump proposed using Guantanamo Bay as a facility for housing migrants, a controversial policy that sparked immediate legal and ethical debates. The proposal was grounded in arguments about border security and resource allocation, but it faced intense criticisms for potentially violating international human rights laws and domestic due process rights. Guantanamo Bay's history of detaining individuals without trial raised alarms among human rights organizations and legal experts. Opponents argued that housing migrants in such a facility blurred the line between immigration enforcement and punitive detention. They warned that the move would set a dangerous precedent for how asylum seekers and undocumented migrants were treated under U.S. law. Supporters of the policy contended that repurposing Guantanamo Bay for migrant detention was a practical solution to alleviate overcrowding at existing immigration facilities. They framed it as a necessary measure to address the influx of migrants and ensure national security. However, legal challenges arose, questioning whether the policy aligned with constitutional protections and international treaties regarding the humane treatment of detainees. The legal battle surrounding this decision had far-reaching implications for immigration detention practices in the United States. If upheld, the policy could redefine how and where migrants are held, potentially influencing future administrations' approaches to border enforcement and human rights compliance. 2. No men in women's sports. Trump signed an executive order preventing transgender women from competing in women's sports, citing fairness in athletic competition as a primary justification. The policy was immediately met with lawsuits, as advocacy groups argued that it violated equal protection rights under the Constitution and federal anti-discrimination laws. Supporters of the order maintained that biological differences provided an unfair advantage in certain sports, making the policy necessary to preserve competitive integrity. They framed it as a way to protect women's sports from what they saw as imbalances caused by transgender participation. Opponents, however, contended that the policy discriminated against transgender athletes and reinforced harmful stereotypes about gender identity. Legal challenges focused on whether the executive order violated Title IX, a federal law prohibiting sex-based discrimination in education and sports. Courts had to weigh scientific arguments about athletic performance against legal protections for transgender individuals. The ruling on this issue had the potential to shape policies on gender inclusion in sports at both state and federal levels. Beyond the legal landscape, the policy ignited cultural and political debates on identity, inclusion, and fairness in competition. The broader implications extended to professionals and amateur sports, influencing policies in international athletic organizations and shaping future discussions on gender in competitive sports. 1. Dismantling USAID. Trump sought to dismantle USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, arguing that its function should be absorbed by other government entities or eliminated entirely. The proposal faced legal challenges, particularly regarding whether the president had the authority to unilaterally shut down a congressionally codified agency. The potential closure of USAID raised significant concerns about its impact on global humanitarian aid. The agency played a crucial role in disaster relief, global health initiatives, and economic development programs. Supporters of the move argue that U.S. foreign policy should prioritize domestic concerns and reduce expenditures on international aid. Critics warned that dismantling USAID could lead to humanitarian crises, weakening American influence abroad. Legal debates revolved around the separation of powers and the extent of executive authority. Courts examined whether the president could unilaterally defund or dissolve an agency established through congressional legislation. The outcome of these cases had the potential to redefine the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches in shaping foreign aid policies. Beyond legal and political debates, the proposal had long-term implications for international relations. The future of USAID, whether dismantled or restructured, could affect diplomatic efforts, foreign partnerships, and America's role in global humanitarian initiatives. From constitutional debates to international human rights issues, these policies highlight the complexities of executive power. Were you surprised? If this video have impacted you and you want to learn more about similar cases, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos.